no assignment, because what God has for me is much greater than what I've been through. Look at your neighbor and say, don't get stuck in Playland. You got to go to Disney World. You can't get Mickey Mouse at McDonald's. No, you might get Ronald McDonald, but I got Mickey, Daffy Duck, and Minnie. I want more out of life, and I can't get stuck in the minute and the mundane trying to get to my destiny. After they dismissed the crowd, Jesus went up on the mountain to pray, because Jesus knows that to be effective in his next assignment, he had to have a conversation with the Lord. He needed to have some God talk before God could get him to where he was going, because God already knew ahead of time what God was going to do on this journey. And Greater Saunders Grove, before you attempt to do ministry, before you attempt to get involved in the reintroduction process, before you pursue the calling of bringing liberation to the oppressed, sight to the blind, healing to the sick, speaking life into the lifeless, and making sure that everybody is taken care of, the first thing you ought to do is make sure you pray. I don't know about you, but we live in a time where we want to do everything else but pray. We want to be seen and recognized. We want leadership positions. We want to be in front of the church, but nobody wants to talk to God. And how is it going to grow? How is it going to last unless we have a little talk with Jesus? Look at the neighbor and say, neighbor, before I move, I got to talk to God first. Because if God created the cosmos and God knows every nook and cranny of this world, that means before I make a step, God was there. Before I make a move, God was there. So before I move, I need to pray. Look at their neighbor and say, you better pray about that thing. Some of you trying to hook up with your boo and you ain't praying. You better pray about that. I preach like I feel it. Some of you in here that got married and you ain't prayed yet. And because they look good, you thought that they were beautiful. But then when you got married, they end up being Dracula. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, before you move, you better pray. And some of us need to pray without ceasing. You better pray, deacon. You better pray. Have I got a witness here? We get you in the house. The disciples are on the boat, straining at the oars and against an adverse wind. Jesus was walking on the sea with the intentions of passing them by. Jesus did not plan to stop and deal with their moment of adversity, because perhaps Jesus knew what they could handle. See, beloved, some storms we go through are meant to go through. Y'all missed it. Some storms we go through are meant to do just that, to go through. And many of us are panicking because the storm has different characteristics and certain characteristics that it brings with it. See, you cannot call it a storm if there are no adverse winds. Y'all missing it. Y'all missing it. There's some things that come with a storm. You can't call it a thunderstorm.
If it ain't no thunder, preacher.
If it ain't no thunder. You can't call it a rainstorm unless you have some wind. And the disciples are panicking because the storm is doing what the storm is created to do. And they wonder why Jesus was passing them by, because Jesus understands that there are often times where we want Jesus to look at our adverse situation and panic to the magnitude of that storms do pass over as well. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I've been in the storm. But the storm is not meant to wreck me. The storm is meant to pass over. And if I can hang on in there while the storm is raging, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Do I have any ride or die saints in here that can testify that I had my share of storms? I had my share of rainy days. I had my share of sleepless nights. But through it all, I've learned how to lean. Through it all, I've learned how to trust and depend on my God. Make your neighbor say, it's just adverse wind. Chill out, baby. Chill out, baby. It's just adverse wind. That storm you going through is just adverse winds. You lost your job. Don't panic. It's adverse wind. Because the same God who was with you in the loss will be the same God that can restore everything you lost in the storm. Your neighbor said trouble won't last always. Can I go a little further? Can I go a little further? The text states that when they saw Jesus walking on the sea, they thought it was, watch this, a ghost.
Unpack it, preacher. Unpack it. Unpack it.
And cried out in fear.
Unpack it, preacher.
For they all saw him and was terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, take heart. It is I. Do not be afraid. My brothers and sisters, Jesus involves himself in the process of reintroduction and demonstrates the power of a reintroduction. As we peruse the parameters of today's text, we will discover the power of a reintroduction. The text states that when they saw Jesus walking on the sea, and I'm almost done, they thought it was a ghost and cried out in fear. For they all saw him and were terrified. The disciples, beloved, are dealing with a crisis, both externally and internally. See, the storm was not really the storm. It was a storm that was going on in their existence.
That was rich.
Sometimes it's not what's going on the outside. But sometimes it's what's going on the inside. God, y'all better help me preach this. They are going to the other side, but they have to deal with adverse winds. They are not at a point in their lives, Bishop, where they are straining at the oars, but they're also straining at their identity. Because some of the stuff going on the outside of your life and in your context is a direct reflection of what's going on inside of your life. They are personally in a crisis because they are still wrestling with this thing called being a disciple of Jesus Christ. They are dealing with the turbulent winds in their existential plight and also dealing with the adverse winds as an identity crisis, which makes them become afraid. Because they are terrified and afraid. They see Jesus and automatically called him a ghost, which is an entity in existence which invokes fear.